Good evening. I'm Pushpesh. My team members are Sanidhya and Syed Afnan. We are Group 13. Our project title is Student Data Manager. We have built this dynamic website which is used to input marks scored by the mentees and help to track performance of their mentees. I'm here to explain you the schema of the project. Our project is based on MVC model, which is Model, View, and Controller. Models are basically databases, views are clients, and controllers are APIs. Talking about the schema, we have two schemas, users and marks. We can see we have function user. In that we have five objects: name, username, email, password, and admin. Name is of string data type and it is to required field, which means it is compulsory to enter the name of the user. In username, it is also of string data type and it also true required field. And username should be unique. Email, string data type same, and it is also required true required field. And email should be unique. But password can be common between two users. And admin is a boolean data type, and default we can say it is false because we have only done completion up to student registration. So we put admin as the false default because student cannot be admin. So talking about our next schema, which is marks. In marks, we have function called marks. In that we have four objects: username, MSC1, MSC2, and MSC3. In username object, we have which is of string data type, and that it is true required field because we have to enter the username of the user. To the next object, we have MSC1, which is also have nested object, and the, like nested object is basically the subjects of that giving department. Or we have in DM, in MSc we have three questions. According to that, we have given all three questions have nine objects, and then same we have done for the MSc2 part and MSc3 part. So these are the things we covered in these two schema. Thank you.
Hello sir, I am Syed Afnan. So our team have built this dynamic website to assist the mentors or class teachers to track the performance of their mentees. So now here I'm going to be explaining about the sign up login API which we have rendered on port number 3000 using Express and Node.js, and we have used MongoDB to store in the data which we are going to be filling now in the API. So let's check out the API which we have created to uh, fill in the data of the user to register into the portal. So here we have this name field which is a required attribute, required field which we are going to be filling, and all the fields which we have here are required. That is, it is obligatory for someone who wants to be registered to the portal to fill in the data. So now let's check out the schema of this API of this database which we are going to be feeding in. Here we have this schema which we are defining by importing this mongoose package through Node.js and also the validator to validate the fields entered. So we have this name field which is now we are going to be storing this schema by mongoose function called schema, which is fed into this variable constant variable user schema, which will define this fields. So here this name field is a required attribute which is to be filled obligatory, and it is restricted to be a string of minimum length of 3. And we have this email ID which is also a string and should be filled as it is important, it is obligatory to fill. And through the validator package we are validating if the email ID is correct, and then also the phone number is restricted to be a number, also it is required to fill, and also it has a minimum length of 10. And similarly we have this password field which is restricted to be a string and should be filled obligatory, so it is set to true, and also it has a minimum length of 10. And then here we are creating a collection called as user, and passing the schema which we have described here through the function of mongoose called model, and which is being stored in this user, and we are passing this we are exporting this to the main application as a body, which will be used to execute queries and save the collection. Now, as I said, we are passing this user as a body to the variable query asynchronously, and whatever the data is filled into the API is going to be sent to this query, and this is a query to insert the data, and which will be saved to the collection called as user, and it will be rendered on the API on the index page. So now that we have a better understanding of schema, let's start by checking out the API. So let's start filling the names. Now as we see that our database is empty right now, let's start by filling the name. Yeah, so I'm starting by filling my name, and this is my mail ID and phone number. And as we remember that password is restricted to be of 10 digits, I'll keep it as 1 to 9 every digit, 1 to 9 and 0, and then let me submit it. And once I submit this all the data will be passed on to the query as I said here, and it will be executed as a query to insert, and then it will be saved to a collection called user, which we can see right now. And now let me submit this button, submit this form, and once I have clicked on submit, now we see we don't have any errors and the page have been refreshed, so that we know that the data have been fed to the database. So now let's check out if we have the data. Yeah, so the data have been fed in. So now this data is going to be used to validate if the correct user is filling in the data, and which will be used for logging in. And now after the logging in, we have another API to fill in the data structure, data of the student, which will be described by my friend Sanidhya. Over to Sanidhya. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sanidhya. This is our another API. In this, we have created three APIs, that is Post API, Get ID API, and Get All API. These all can come under the Marks API. Post API will help us to enter the marks of the student. Get ID API will help us to enter the get the marks of a very particular student, and Get All ID API will help us to get the marks of every student in that database. Now coming up to its working, here I'm using Postman software. I am entering the marks for a student whose username is A230,000. This is the username of a student. Here I've entered some random marks for him in this very subject, and here I'm going to send the request. Now after the request has been sent, I'm going to fetch the data and fetch the marks of that student. So when I come to the get API, when I'm going to call the get API with the username as A 230,000, I'm going to receive all the marks that I've entered for that particular student. Here, if we go down, we can see the marks obtained by that student. Here are some of the changes. Here are some of the marks which we are getting here. And this is for a very particular student whose username is A230,000. Now coming on our Mongo campus, we can see the changes here also after we refresh it. So we get the data for this very student, and each object here we have created is displaying the marks of every subject. So this was a demonstration of our backend. Thank you.